Mr. Lutz.
I was afraid you wouldn't make it, Doctor. Those roads are pretty bad.
Oh, it wasn't too bad.
Em was right in with Ben.
I'll go on.
Oh, you'll be all right. The doctor's coming. You're going to be all right. Oh, Dr. McLeod, thank God you've come. His fever, it's worse. He doesn't even know me.
How long has it been worse?
About 2 hours.
Well, he's coming to the crisis. I'll have to stay. I'll need some lukewarm water. And a coarse towel or a grain sack. Now, laddie, you come over here and let me listen to your back. That's the boy. Put your head down.
A century ago, there were few specifically helpful things that the doctor could do for his little patient. The moral support of a kind and sympathetic physician who ministered to his patient's comfort while he awaited the forces of nature to produce the crisis was the order of the day. However, in the last 100 years, medicine has changed profoundly, and it has been said that greater advances have been made than in all previously recorded history. Today, it is the rule to find the resources of the medical profession, the supporting professions and technologies, as well as those of the whole community working together as a team.
Emergency operator.
Hello? My little boy has just taken sleeping pills. Can you help me?
Yes, what is your name, please?
Mrs. Gibson.
Mrs. Gibson? And your address?
60 Avalon Road.
Just stand by, Mrs. Gibson. I'll put you through to the Poison Center.
Children's Hospital Poison Center.
Operator, will you get the doctor, please? We have a poison call on the line.
Calling Dr. Ferguson. Dr. Charles Ferguson, 21.
Here in Winnipeg, dialing 999 puts you through to the Poison Control Center. A police cruiser is immediately sent to your address in case someone has to be taken to the hospital in a hurry. Poison control centers such as this are the organized response of the whole community to a type of accident where the patient's life can depend on how quickly treatment is administered. In a modern children's hospital, the patient has a team of doctors and nurses who have trained half their lives for just such an emergency.
The heart. You got a faint heartbeat, but I can't hear it very well.
Give him a few pumps.
If the patient requires further hospitalization, he may spend a few days with some of the other children receiving treatment in this modern, pleasant, and well-run hospital. These premature babies have the latest respirators, incubators, and skilled personnel working round the clock to sustain these new arrivals who are so impatient to get started in the world. Hospitals throughout Canada are the workshops of Canadian doctors. Here in the Vancouver General, an average of 100 operations are performed every day. The most important techniques that have made modern heart surgery possible were developed in Canada. The introduction of heparin to delay clotting, hypothermia to chill the body, and curare to relax the muscles during anesthesia all led the way to lengthy corrective surgery, while the blood is circulated through the patient's body by a mechanical heart pump. If the heart were to stop beating, another Canadian development would be brought into play. The cardiac pacemaker, which would be placed in the patient's chest to stimulate the heart to beat regularly. The tense drama of heart surgery is enacted more and more frequently, and the advances in treatment and surgical techniques become more spectacular as each day adds to our knowledge and understanding. At the Rehabilitation Institute in Montreal, medical history is being made in another field.
Thanks to this miniaturized hand, it is possible to send children back to school, even the thalidomide children. It's an extraordinary thing.
Very wonderful. Oh, yes, indeed.
And what's Mr. Lippe doing?
We are working on essentially the same hand as you have on. We are developing new electrodes, batteries, power supplies, and electronic equipment.
Well, you know, from this hand, it'll be possible to build an entire new arm for those children with thalidomide deformities who have no arms at all. And this will be their full rehabilitation for the future. No doubt about it. It's a marvelous invention.
When the thalidomide tragedy struck in 1962, the resources of science were challenged to provide substitutes for missing and deformed limbs.
Hello, Miss Brosmer. Comment ça va, la petite Jeanne d'Arc? Ça va mieux, là? Montre-moi comment tu marches maintenant. Encore un peu. Oh, c'est bien, c'est bien. Well, how's the good lady today?
Even with all these exciting advances in rehabilitation techniques, it is still the enthusiasm and the interest of doctors such as Dr. Gustave Gingras that give a patient the will and the strength to make a quick recovery and resume the activities of everyday life.
Good. Ah, c'est bien, ça sera pas long. On va les béquilles maintenant. Bonjour, ma belle enfant. Buenas tardes, señorita.
¿Cómo está, doctor?
Muy bien,
Bien,
muy
gracias.
bien. Fait bien, la petite, hein?
Oui,
ah,
très
très bien. Good. Bonjour.
Bonjour,
Ça va
docteur.
bien?
Ça va bien.
Ça fait combien de temps, là, que tu es en position d'équilibre comme ça?
40 minutes.
40 minutes, le temps passe, hein? C'est bien.
vite.
C'est bien. Good, je suis content.
A century ago, psychiatric patients were wards of the state and were often relegated to a limbo world from which few ever returned. But gradually, through the courage and determination of the many Canadian pioneers in this field, great steps have been taken to bring light into the world of shadows, which has been the world of the mentally ill. In this new building, named after Dr. C.K. Clark, research scientists work side by side with clinical specialists, social workers, and therapists to bring the resources of modern medicine to bear on the problems of the mentally ill. From one coast of Canada to the other, the building of new hospitals and research centers is trying to keep pace with the demand for more well-trained health workers in all aspects of medicine. The new medical facilities built for the Centennial of Confederation at Dalhousie University in Halifax have been named after the first president of the Canadian Medical Association, Sir Charles Tupper. The same Sir Charles Tupper who was one of the fathers of Confederation.
There are many Canadians who have distinguished themselves in medicine, but perhaps the best known and most renowned was Sir William Osler, professor of the Institutes of Medicine here at McGill, professor of medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, at Johns Hopkins University, and finally, Regius Professor of Medicine at Oxford. His ashes rest here in an urn behind an unmarked panel in this magnificent collection of medical books which he bequeathed to McGill University. But his spirit lives on in the hearts and minds of physicians the world over. One of the things that wore Osler out at the end of his life was the great tragedy which struck in 1914, World War I.
The incredible loss of life and the maiming of young bodies put the whole medical profession to an urgent test. New conditions sprang out of the conflict: shell shock, wound infection, and appalling disfigurement. The need for skin and bone grafting techniques led to the work of Dr. Edward Galley in the repair of wounds by living suture. And it was the Canadian, Dr. Lawrence Bruce Robertson, who introduced the multiple syringe method of blood transfusion at No. 2 Canadian Casualty Clearing Station, a procedure which saved countless lives. Of the doctors from Canada who distinguished themselves in this great conflict. Many gave their lives as well. Men like Dr. John McCrae, V.C., whose memory lives through the words of his unforgettable poem, In Flanders Fields. Among the returning soldiers was a young doctor named Frederick Banting.
I had met Fred Banting once before we started the work. He came up to Toronto from London, and we had a short talk about possibility of work together. I formed the impression then that he was a very definite character. He was artistic, as you know, liked to draw. He was interested in music and sang himself whenever he got an opportunity. We all know later that, well, we knew, matter of fact, then that he had won the Military Cross in the First War. He was a courageous doctor who was devoted to every aspect of medicine.
Dr. Charles Best shared the Nobel Prize with Frederick Banting for the discovery of insulin, which provided the world with its first effective remedy for diabetes. We asked Dr. Best to recall the most exciting moment of that great discovery.
To go back a little, we made our dogs diabetic by completely removing the pancreas. The animals became ill, their blood sugar, the sugar content of their blood went way up 4 or 5 times the normal figure, and they excreted a lot of sugar in the urine. So they were extremely good test objects for a hypothetical internal secretion. The most dramatic point in my memory of those researches was the demonstration on our first diabetic dog of the lowering of the blood sugar. The decrease in sugar excretion was definite, but it was the fall in blood sugar which was the most dramatic episode.
The first successful blood bank was established in 1934 during the Spanish Civil War by the Canadian Dr. Norman Bethune. A champion of many causes, Norman Bethune died in 1939 in China while serving the Army of the People's Republic. He is a legendary figure whose memory is revered throughout the Chinese mainland. One of the most important contributions to the study of the human brain was made during the 1930s by Dr. Wilder Penfield, one of Canada's most distinguished neurosurgeons. His work in mapping the brain and in devising operative procedures has produced a treatment for certain forms of epilepsy and has significantly aided the whole field of neurological surgery.
Below point 14, 9 to 11 are just above the fissure of Sylvius. Electrode 12 is on the insula, below the fissure.
In this operation for epilepsy, the response in different areas of the brain is measured by an encephalograph, an electronic device which enables the surgeon, Dr. Rasmussen, to operate in the human brain with pinpoint accuracy.
Start counting up to 10, Paul. Start counting up. Can you count to 10? Start. 1. Go ahead. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Stimulation of cut in the hippocampus laterally did not interrupt counting.
We've seen delta activity in opposition phase here around both 7 and 11, which isn't seen at other electrodes.
An epileptic seizure is brought on by stimulation in order to measure the success of the surgery.
After just taking off the very tip end, and there were a few spikes there, so I went ahead and took off the rest of the pest. The body of the hippocampus is in place, and this really got rid of all the epileptiform abnormality, and so I won't do any more radical removal there.
Suppose that's herniation alone?
Well, it looks like it, you know. Because of all this rim of tissue from the hippocampus, the tissue that goes around the tip of the ventricle into the amygdala.
Patients are brought from all over the world to the Montreal Neurological Institute to have this operation performed by the men who developed it. World War II was to bring about major advances in medicine throughout the world. Once again, the pace of medical research was accelerated dramatically as human beings were faced with many new tests of stamina and endurance.
A Canadian research team under Sir Frederick Banting tackled many of the problems of aviation medicine. Early in the war, Dr. Wilbur Franks experimented with the problems of pilots experiencing blackouts when exposed to forces exceeding that of gravity, and devised an anti-gravity flying suit, which succeeded in overcoming this problem. The Franks flying suit was a secret weapon that was to remain solely in Allied hands throughout the entire war. Using the accelerator for measuring the human response to gravity, Dr. Franks initiated a basic research program in aviation medicine, which was to lay the foundation for many of the major medical developments in the current exploration of space. The extra mobility and performance which pilots achieved wearing the Franks flying suit were to have a decisive effect in the war. As the war advanced, a new kind of teamwork was required of the Allies, which is typified in the great invasion of Normandy on D-Day. There were many individual accomplishments in medicine, but the pattern was changed. Today, most medical research is continued through large team efforts, involving the use of complex facilities, large financial commitments, specialists in many fields working together, and the exchange and development of ideas on an international level. There were many outstanding individual achievements in the post-war years, such as the work of Dr. Hans Selye on biological stress, or that of Dr. Murray Barr, who opened up a whole new field of human genetics. But the trend of collective projects involving many disciplines became the rule. A good illustration was the campaign in British Columbia to eliminate one form of cancer in women by early diagnosis. All across the province, doctors took smears from patients and submitted them to a screening laboratory organized by the Canadian Cancer Society and the Vancouver General Hospital. The smears were stained so that malignant cells could be immediately detected, and the disease could then be treated before it became dangerous. If the smear is not obviously malignant, it is assessed by a team of research specialists headed by Dr. H.K. Fiedler on closed-circuit television. In 1951, in Saskatchewan, a group of research workers led by Dr. H.E. Johns developed the Cobalt Therapy Unit, a giant step forward in the treatment of cancer by irradiation. Early detection, followed by prompt treatment, represents currently our most effective weapon against cancer in all its forms. 10 years later, a continent-wide effort was launched to eliminate poliomyelitis by administration of the virus vaccine developed by Dr. Jonas Salk. A key part in this program was played by a team of tissue culture scientists at the Connaught Medical Research Laboratories in Toronto. Led by Dr. Raymond Parker, they developed the early method for growing live poliovirus, first on monkey kidney tissue, then on a synthetic medium. They were called on to produce all the live virus used in the initial production of the Salk vaccine, and this constituted an essential and substantial Canadian contribution to the virtual elimination of poliomyelitis.
Behind all these achievements and this progress have been generations of Canadian doctors. Their common meeting place and their organization to advance the cause of the mitigation of disease and the promotion of good health for all our fellow citizens has been the Canadian Medical Association. The full story is told in this volume, written as a centenary project by Dr. H.E. McDermott, official historian of the CMA. As old as Confederation itself, the Canadian Medical Association was founded in 1867 in Quebec City.
In the same year that the Dominion of Canada was born, 164 doctors from Upper and Lower Canada, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick assembled here at Laval University to create the Canadian Medical Association. They drew up their constitution and elected their first officers here in the Salle de Promotion. The delegates from French-speaking Canada brought with them a proud heritage of medical achievement which predated Confederation by 300 years. This small church of the Hôtel Dieu de Québec, the oldest hospital in North America, stands surrounded by the many additions which make up today's modern hospital. Overlooking the cloisters of the sisters who founded the hospital in 1639 is the Medical Museum, which houses many historical reminders of how medicine was practiced a century and more ago. The brilliant contributions of France to clinical medicine had been added to and improved upon in New France, and this tradition was incorporated into the Canadian Medical Association in 1867. When Newfoundland joined Canada in 1949, the heritage of the Grenfell Mission became part of the fabric of the CMA. Founded by Sir Wilfrid Grenfell in 1892, the mission has served the outports of Newfoundland and Labrador by dog team, hospital and dental ships, and more recently, by aeroplanes. Dedication and endurance are required of all physicians, but nowhere is that more apparent than in the circumstances that confront the doctors who have chosen to serve in this mission. The grassroots of the Canadian Medical Association are the branch medical societies across Canada. The members are all practicing physicians who are in close touch with the community they serve. Here, general practitioners and specialists meet to learn from each other and discuss the medical issues of the day. Branch meetings, such as this one in Musquodoboit Harbor in Nova Scotia, illustrate the democratic process of professional self-government. The policies of the association are reached by study and debate, and then a review of the year's work is undertaken at the annual general meeting, such as this, our 99th annual meeting in Edmonton in 1966. Besides making policy decisions, the annual meeting provides members with scientific sessions that bring all the latest advances of medicine to the attention of busy practicing physicians.
The silver or bottom portion, which is known as the descent stage, will be used as a launching platform for the yellow portion, which is known as the ascent stage. It comes off with a rocket engine in the bottom and will fly up to lunar orbit to meet the command module, which has been orbiting all this time. And there's a proposal afoot to use this rather large spent stage as an orbiting Earth laboratory. We go back a bit.
Dr. Owen Coons, a Canadian and a former associate of Dr. Wilbur Franks, is Deputy Director of Medical Research for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. He examines some of the current medical problems of inhabiting the moon.
To replace the whole LEM, its descent and ascent stages, with equipment that could be used to make one of these empty tanks in this stage livable and in fact configure it as a laboratory, and it gives us the chance of doing some really meaningful and worthwhile and properly scientific physiological research. We hope that we'll be able to come back some year hence and tell you about the results of the physiological investigations while the astronomers go and talk to their people at their meetings about what the astronomers will find out in Earth orbit.
At sessions of the General Council, standing and special committees present their reports.
And 5, that the CMA recommends that research into the accident
problem be encouraged and fostered in Canada, for example, by the establishment of accident study and control units.
Moved and seconded that this recommendation be approved. It's open for discussion. Dr. Armour?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to Part 5 of this recommendation, it might interest Council to know that in our Divisional Committee on Child Welfare,
decisions are reached and new projects are initiated. And finally, at the close of the meeting, the new president is installed, and members who have given long and distinguished service to the Canadian Medical Association are honored.
The sum of a doctor's life is service. His learning does not end at graduation, which is only the beginning of knowledge. The fact of progress is written plain and large on the pages of Canadian medical history. Here, in the logic of discovery, the improvement of procedures, the development of ideas, and the application of knowledge to human needs lies the vitalizing spark of human history. The Canadian Medical Association, on this, its 100th anniversary, dedicates this film gratefully to the thousands of Canadian doctors whose love of the art and whose devotion to the cause of better health has made this story possible. We look with confidence to the young men and women of today and tomorrow to join the ranks of this profession and carry us all into the next great century of Canadian medicine.